In this, the final segment on the Home Cost Allocation tool, we will cover the two remaining method-specific worksheets. So far, this series has addressed the Selection of Method page, the Standard Method, and the most common use of the Proration Method, which identifies the number of home units needed based on a proposed level of home investment. The final two worksheets are both used in situations where we're using the so-called units to dollars approach, starting with a set of proposed home units and calculating the eligible cost of those units. The hybrid method, which we'll focus on, is really an extension of the proration method as it's used in a units to dollars approach. To understand the differences between the two approaches, we need to start with a related policy point. When units are not comparable, a PJ must designate fixed home units and use the standard method of cost allocation. When units are comparable, a PJ may choose to designate floating home units. Which unit is a home unit may move around or float within the project as tenants' incomes change and units naturally turn over. When designating floating units, however, HUD requires that the home-assisted units be distributed proportionally across the unit types in the project. That's why, in the proration method, going from dollars to units, we assigned at least the home fair share to each tranche or group of units, and then rounded up to a whole number. When going the other way, from units to dollars, you can't always assign the home units in exactly the same proportion across each unit type, and that's what leads to the difference between these two spreadsheets. We can only use the proration method dollars needed sheet if the home units can be designated in exactly the same proportion to each unit type. For example, in a project with 10 units, 5 comparable one-bedroom units and 5 comparable two-bedroom units. If we're starting with 4 home units, 2 of each size, then the home units are in exactly the same proportion. We have 40% of each unit type, so we can use the proration method. But what if in that same project the developer was proposing to have 5 home units? I can't split 5 units in the exact same proportion across the 2 unit types in this project. That would require having 2.5 one-bedroom and 2.5 two-bedroom units, which isn't physically possible. Maybe we do 2 one-bedrooms and 3 two-bedroom units, or the other way around, but either way we have a different share of each unit type. However, because that assignment of units is roughly proportional, we can use the hybrid method. Essentially, we're within the range of rounding the number of home units up or down to a whole number within each group of units, compared to having the exact same percentage. As we'll see in a minute, to use the hybrid method, units still have to be roughly proportional. You couldn't, in this example, assign 1 one-bedroom home unit and 4 two-bedroom home units. As we get ready to demonstrate the spreadsheets, we're going to modify case study A from the last tutorial just a little bit. The project's total unit count, sizes, comparability, total cost, and ineligible cost are all the same. But instead of starting from a proposed home investment and determining how many units must be designated, the developer has proposed to assign 10 units as home assisted and wants to know, prior to the underwriting gap analysis, how much home could potentially be awarded based on those. We're going to see how the spreadsheets help us determine whether the unit designations are exactly or roughly proportional, which helps us figure out which sheet to use. So as we look at this example, we're again working from case study A, which was a 70-unit project with 10 one-bedroom and 60 two-bedroom units. We've determined that within each of these groupings of units, the units are comparable, which allows us potentially to use the proration, and in this case, the hybrid method. So we're starting here on the selection of method page. All the information is the same from when we did case study A. And what we're going to do is scroll down, and instead of starting from a given amount of home investment and solving for the number of units, how many units must be designated for the given home investment, what we have is a developer in this scenario that has proposed to designate 10 home units, and now we're trying to figure out how many dollars that might suggest. So we see that we've grayed out the dollars to units approach, and we're using the units to funding approach, or units to dollars approach as we sometimes call it. We always can use the standard method, but now we have the option of the proration method or the hybrid method, both where we're solving for the dollars needed. So we're going to go over here to the proration method for a moment and take a quick look. And what I'd like to do is show you again, we've This information pulls over. The overall residential square footage has pulled over. This information is pulling over from the selection of method page. And what we're trying to figure out is, can we prorate? And so we have 10 units. Let's say that we're going to use 2 of the 1 bedrooms and 8 of the 2 bedrooms. The question is, can we use the proration sheet? In this scenario, we can't. What's going on, in order to use the proration sheet when going from units to dollars, is the units need to be designated in exactly the same proportion across each unit type. If I have 2 of the 1 bedroom and 8 of the 2 bedroom units, I have 20% of the 1 bedrooms and 13% of the 2s. It's not in exactly the same proportion. And so what's going on here is it tells us, no, we cannot prorate because the units are not exactly proportional. So I might try some different scenarios. What about 1 and 9? No, that's 10% and 15%. What about 3 and 7? No, I'm even further out of whack at 30% and 11%. So what we conclude is that there's no way, from a mathematical standpoint, to designate these units in exactly the same proportion across the unit types. So I can't use the proration method. But let's see if we can use the hybrid method. In the hybrid method, the sheet's going to look very similar. Again, much of the information is pulling from the selection of method page, just like it does across the other sheets. We're going from units to dollars, so the proposed home investment has not been provided. We don't know that yet. And we're going to look and see whether or not we can use that designation of units. So the first question is, are the units designated in roughly the same proportion? If we use 2 and 8, we see that yes, they are roughly proportional. Even though we have 20% of the 10 one-bedroom units and 13% of the 60 total 2-bedroom units, that's roughly proportional. There's no way mathematically to take those 10 units and split them into a 1 and 6 configuration. But 2 and 8 is roughly proportional. What's going on behind the scenes is the computer's doing the math and saying, what is 10 as a percentage of 70? And then is this 2 plus or minus rounding up or rounding down to the whole number? And is 8 plus or minus rounding up and rounding down to the whole number? If it is, this tells us that we can use the hybrid method. They're not exactly the same proportion, but they are roughly the same proportion. So that's the difference between the proration method dollars needed and the hybrid method dollars needed. So for this example, the 70 units, 10 ones and 62s with a 2 and 8 configuration, we can use the hybrid method. Remember, when we're doing floating units, we must designate our units in a proportional fashion. If the project does not accommodate an exactly proportional fashion, then we need to be at least roughly proportional. So I can't, for example, do 5 and 5. I cannot use the hybrid method in that scenario. So we're going to go back to our the 2 and 8 configuration, and it says yes, we can use this method. So now we're going to go on down. We're going to calculate the actual cost of the units. Same number, $13,283,000 is our total development cost. Our ineligible development cost of $1.1 million, we've just copied that in from the prior sheet. Same information, same case study. But what's going on now is we have 2 one-bedroom units at an average square footage of 846. 846 times our base cost per square foot works out to $134,000. 2 of those units means the subtotal of those units, the actual cost and eligible cost of those units, is almost $270,000. 8 two-bedroom units at an average individual unit cost of $179,000 is another $1.4 million. Those added together gives us the actual cost of the home units at $1.7 million. We calculate the maximum project subsidy in the same way. We've obtained the per unit subsidy numbers from the field office. We have 2 one-bedroom units at a maximum subsidy of $160,000 and 8 two-bedroom units at a maximum subsidy of $195,000. So the maximum project subsidy in this case is almost $1.9 million. The maximum home investment then We don't yet know the gap. The maximum home investment at this moment is the lesser of the 1.7 in actual eligible cost and the almost 1.9 in maximum project subsidy. As a PJ, you still need to go back and underwrite the project and make sure that the gap is not greater than this total investment. Once we know that, we may have to go back and go ahead and reduce this further to the actual need for home funds in the project. But based on the 10 units that are being proposed, they're roughly proportional in their allocation, and they're proportional enough to use the hybrid methodology. And so we've determined that for those 10 units, we conceptually can provide as much as $1,706,459 to the project. So that's how you do the proration dollars needed and the hybrid method dollars needed. They're really iterations of the same thing, and the primary difference is whether or not the units are designated in exactly the same proportion or roughly the same proportion. In both cases, you need to pay attention to this line 13 about whether we can use the hybrid method or the proration method or not. So if these units are designated in a wacky configuration that is not roughly proportional, it will tell you, no, you cannot use this method. So hopefully you've now had the opportunity to understand how to use the overall cost allocation tool. Again, general instructions page gives you some hits about the whole thing. Every project will fill out the selection of method page, and then you will use one of the remaining spreadsheets for each project. So you may be using the standard method, you may be going a very common path and using the proration method from dollars and calculating the units needed, or if you're using a method where you go from units to dollars, you may end up using either the proration method or the hybrid method, provided that your units are comparable.